Good evening. My name is Melissa Williams, and I serve as the president of the Washington County Board of Education. Welcome to the members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, staff, and the community to the Board of Education's public business meeting. Everyone is participating in this meeting using a telephone or an electronic device. By way of background, it has always been the practice of the WCBOE to meet in person and to invite members of the public to the board's meetings. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, certain legal directives, and the need to safeguard the health of the community, it is necessary to participate in this public meeting by phone or an electronic device. Today's business meeting will be recorded, and the public may access the public meeting now on Channel 99, Facebook, and on WCPS's website. The public comment portion of tonight's meeting will not take place. The Board of Education encourages the public to submit their comments in writing to boe@wcps.k12.md.us, and this information will be distributed to board members and the superintendent. At this time, I call to order this public business meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. Dr. Bishop, would you please call the roll so that we may determine if we have a quorum of board members present?
Mr. Bickford?
Here.
Mrs. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Gesford?
Present.
Mrs. Murray?
Present.
Mr. Ridenauer?
Here.
Mr. Stauffer?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here. Okay, we have 7 members of the board present, and I declare a quorum. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce a grade 5 student from Smithsburg Elementary School, Jamie Quavis. Jamie will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be followed by a moment of silence. Jamie, if you would, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for helping to get our meeting started. Thank you for being with us this evening.
You're welcome.
At this time, we'll have approval of this evening's agenda.
Mr. Stauffer, so move.
Mrs.
Thank
Fisher
you.
seconds.
Thank you. Thank you both. Is there any discussion of the agenda? Hearing none. Dr. Bishop, will you please call the roll for the vote?
Mrs. Fisher?
Aye.
Mr. Gesford?
Aye.
Mrs. Murray? Aye. Mr. Ridenauer?
Aye.
Mr. Stauffer?
Aye.
Mrs. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Bickford?
Aye.
Mr. Mackley?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have a unanimous vote from board members and the student member concurs, so our agenda for this evening has been approved. We'll move on to approval of the minutes.
Mrs. Williams, I move for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Tuesday, May 5th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Gesford. Is there a second?
Mr. Bickford seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the closed session? Hearing none, we'll move on to the vote. Dr. Bishop, would you please call the roll for the vote?
Mr. Guestford,
Aye.
Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ridenhour,
Yes, I approve.
Mr. Stauffer,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Bickford,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
I have 6 affirmative votes. So the minutes of the closed session of Tuesday, May 5th stand approved.
Mrs. Williams, I have a second motion for the approval of the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, May 5th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Guestford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Are there any additions or corrections to the business meeting minutes? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Dr. Bishop, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Ridenhour,
Aye.
Mr. Stauffer,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Bickford,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Guestford,
Aye.
and Mr. Mackley.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. I have 7 affirmative votes from board members with the student member concurring. So the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, May 5th stand approved. At this time, we would usually have public comment, but the public comment portion of this meeting will not take place this evening. However, the Board of Education encourages the public to submit their comments in writing to boe@wcps.k12.md.us. We have no old business to conduct this evening, so we'll move right ahead to new business. And our first item under consideration is this evening's consent agenda. Mr. Scott Bechtel, Supervisor of Purchasing, is presenting. Mr. Bechtel.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. Tonight, I have 8 items for your review. The Purchasing Review Committee has reviewed these items, and they are being recommended for approval. And staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Is there a motion?
This is Mr. Bickford. I can make the motion to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for library management system software renewal to Follett at a cost of $51,137.20. Annual maintenance of print center equipment to Canon Solutions America, Inc. at a cost of $109,269.88. Printing equipment, supplies, software, and service solutions to Canon Solutions American, Inc. at an approximate cost of $223,083.69. Data warehousing, software maintenance, and support services renewal to Who Knew It LLC at a cost of $59,439.78. Frontline education software modules, absence and substitute calling system, professional learning management system, employee evaluation management, and frontline recruiting and hiring renewal to Frontline Education at a cost of $136,499.85. Advanced Placement United States Government and Politics text with print and digital resources to Bedford Freeman and Worth Publishing Group at a cost of $68,651.61. Unit price contract for nursing and special education service providers renewal to various vendors at the unit prices listed and maintenance and operations work order system renewal to Dude Solutions, Inc. at a cost of $54,646.31.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Mrs. Murray seconds.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there any discussion or any questions for Mr. Bechtel? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Dr. Bishop, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ridenhour,
Aye.
Mr. Stauffer,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Bickford,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Guestford,
Aye.
Mrs. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Mackley.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. We have 7 affirmative votes with the student member concurring. Tonight's consent agenda has been unanimously passed.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Mr. Bechtel. That concludes our old business for this evening. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Michael.
Thank you, President Williams. We're honored here tonight to recognize some of our excellent students. We had the opportunity a couple board meetings ago to recognize our advanced placement honorees that earned certain levels of success on the AP exams. Tonight, we want to recognize our IB students. And tonight we have with us Mr. James Alshire, principal of North Hagerstown High School, who's going to share a little bit and recognize the students for their International Baccalaureate diploma, as well as our CTE candidates as well. Mr. Alshire.
Good evening. In order to be a candidate for completing the IB diploma program, students must successfully complete at least 6 IB courses and the corresponding assessments. Each candidate must also complete the extended essay, which is an independent research project on a topic of the candidate's choice, guided by a faculty advisor. In order to be a candidate for completing the IB career-related program, students must successfully complete at least 3 IB courses and the corresponding assessments. Each candidate must also complete the personal and professional skills course and pass an externally moderated industry-related assessment. In addition, each candidate must successfully complete a reflective project, which is an independent research project centered around an ethical dilemma in the student's chosen career-related study. Tonight we'll be honoring the International Baccalaureate candidates in both the diploma program and the career-related program. International Baccalaureate candidates for the IB diploma program: Nada Abelsud, Josie Alshouse, Mary Claire Anderson, Lauren Asbury, Connor Bowers, David Butts, Peyton Carroll, Jackson Conroy, Sophia Corsi, Richard Reed Daltridge, Trent DeLashmutt, Miriam Diallo, Patrick Dominguez Reyes, Allison Elliott, Ryan Flint, J. Lee Foster, Michael Frazee, Maja Hosmerbrook, Lucia Hammond, Delaney House, Tanner Curley, Paige Ludwig, Catherine McKean, Madeline Moats, Kosi Naquanta, Bosman Owusa Ayin, Ashley Pate, Alice Poffenberger, Sophie Scheck, Daniel Sobrowski, Isabel Shepard, Andrew Stein, and Samuel Strama. Congratulations to our IB diploma program candidates. And our International Baccalaureate career-related program candidates: Johanna Arcia, Anna Bergschneider, Jose Cook, Lucille Covington, Shelby Hendrickson, Madeline Hill, Kiana Keys, Cameron Knoll, Rory O'Hanlon, Christian Robinson, Taylor Short, Ian Waugh, Walter West, Megan Williams, and Jeremiah Wright. Congratulations to all of our International Baccalaureate candidates.
Thank you, Principal Elshire. Again, I'd like to offer my congratulations, and I'm sure on behalf of the board, we want to congratulate these students for their outstanding accomplishments. This is a very rigorous program, and parents, you should be very proud of your children, and our students, we're certainly proud of you, and you should be proud of your accomplishments as well. So again, thank you, Principal Elshire. At this time, Mrs. Williams, I'd like to call on Dr. Bishop. Dr. Bishop is chairing a committee that we've established here in Washington County Public Schools to close any potential learning gap as a result of the COVID-19 school closure here this spring. Very, very concerned about that for our children of all ages and of our striving and thriving learners. And I've asked Dr. Bishop to chair a committee. She has established a number of subcommittees. Likely those subcommittees will continue to expand as we start closing the gap for a whole variety of students. So Dr. Bishop, if you would just bring us a brief update on the progress of the committee. I know you've been working very hard. The team's been working very hard.
Sure. The Students First COVID-19 Task Force was formed by Dr. Michael to provide him as superintendent with a variety of recommendations and considerations for Washington County Public Schools to be aware of as we're making decisions and plans during this unprecedented pandemic. The task force discussions have focused on 3 phases, from ending the school year, summer school, and then starting the new school year. And the 3 phases, we've labeled them Phase 1, ready to learn at home, Phase 2, retain learning, and Phase 3, re-entering learning at school. The task force currently has 39 members divided into 4 teams. One team is logistics and operations. The other is curriculum and distance learning. And then there's a team for elementary schools and secondary schools. The task force members include students, parents, teachers, curriculum supervisors, school administrators, operations supervisors, and senior leadership. And meetings are held every week or 2, and they're using either email or Zoom for their virtual meetings. And then as team leaders, they are meeting with me about twice each week to bring together all of our ideas. So far, Phase 1 recommendations and considerations before the declaration that schools were closed included a variety of return options to adapt to the current governor's orders in classrooms, cafeterias, gyms, and buses. But then after it was announced that schools were indeed closed for the remainder of the year, then the task force teams discussed recommendations of how and when staff would return to work, the tasks required to be completed for the end of the school year by various staff and departments. We've discussed picking up personal belongings of staff following governor's orders before and after the stay-at-home order, and adhering to our negotiated agreements of our bargaining units were all considerations provided to Dr. Michael as he and senior leadership developed the plan for staff to return to work. A small group is working on celebrations like 5th grade citizenship awards, SSL, CTE, Seal Biliteracy Awards, and the Celebration of Excellence. And another group, including high school principals, are working on possible graduations, including traditional live stream and virtual formats. The task force is now providing recommendations to the superintendent on marking period 4 grades, picking up student belongings, dropping off school items, and checking in devices like iPads and Chromebooks. As we move to discussing Phase 2, recommendations and considerations for summer are happening at the same time as Phase 1, ending the school year. The first recommendation of the task force is to provide summer professional development for teachers and summer school to continue student learning. Although we feel that our traditional face-to-face formats for summer workshops and summer school would just be ideal, we think they may just not be possible, so alternative ideas using technology and even small groups are being planned. The task force has now also begun discussions regarding Phase 3, returning to school next school year. And as we start, we always begin with the questions, including how to close the digital divide, how to close the achievement gap, how to prioritize learning standards, how to review and recover learning from the prior year, and how to maintain social distancing, frequent hand washing, and also sanitizing surfaces frequently touched in schools. There are still many unknowns regarding COVID-19, the governor's orders, and the State Department of Education decisions. So all phase 3 discussions of the task force will include many options and what-if scenarios until we just know more definitively. The task force continues to evolve and grow. And during this pandemic, as changes, decisions, and information may also change as members and teams are needed based on those changes. So following the current governor's orders and protecting public health are important to the task force. So the committees have reviewed the Center for Disease Control and Protection guidance documents. They've reviewed the Maryland's Roadmap to Recovery, and they have also reviewed Maryland's Recovery Plan for Education. However, if I must say, the priority of the task force is students, and we've given considerable thought and consideration placed on understanding how to continue to provide the very best education and the highest expectations for learning opportunities possible in these challenging circumstances to meet the needs of all of our students from our many diverse backgrounds across Washington County Public Schools.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bishop. I appreciate your efforts and all the team members that are supporting our recovery plan. We actually were in motion even before the state. I know the state's plan is got a lot of people a little bit excited about the fall. I would remind folks we're 90 days away from that. It'll come quickly, but as Dr. Bishop indicated, we have a lot of unknowns. We're going to keep up with that. We're going to provide excellent education right now and in the summer and in the fall. We have every intention of doing that. So again, thank you, Dr. Bishop, and the whole team that continued to work on this effort. I know in addition to being anxious about the fall, we have many, particularly seniors, that are anxious about graduation. At this point, we continue to pursue our three-prong approach to graduation. Our virtual graduation, we valedictorian, salutatorian, principal speeches, other comments and speeches from people at the end of last week, and I think tomorrow we'll wrap up those tapings. We have students getting prepared to submit their 10 or 15 second video clip and other requirements to pull together all the virtual information. We're very pleased how that's coming together. I think the last of our cap and gowns come tomorrow, and many of those have already been distributed. So things are coming together for our virtual graduation. Our hope is the virtual graduation will be actually a keepsake or a memento, because we'll have some form of an in-person graduation. So at this point, we've continued to work with a whole variety of partners and a whole team of people working on what graduation might look like if we can't have a traditional graduation here in June. And those plans are still coming together, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to do something in June, and we'll keep the public informed of that. Mr. Mackley, I do want to thank you for sharing with some public information to some emails that we received, very clear information regarding where we are. The information was shared by your fellow senior classmates. I do, again, appreciate the input from the team. If there's a need to get that group back together, I'm sure they'd be more than willing to get back together. I'll probably get them back together if indeed we're able to pull off, particularly the in-person traditional graduation, we're able to pull that off. I think we're very well versed in how that's going to happen. The in-person graduation, we probably will give some other updates to that group of seniors and see if they have any final suggestions as we get closer to seeing if we're able to pull that off. So thank you for your input and support. And Mrs. Williams, I believe that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Dr. Bishop, we'll move to personnel action.
Yes, good evening, Mrs. Williams, Dr. Michael, and board members. As we discussed earlier in closed session, there's several staff changes for your review. So at this time, I ask for your approval of today's personnel actions.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Is there a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Ride.
Ridenhour. Thank you, Mr. Ridenhour. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any questions for Dr. Bishop? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Dr. Bishop, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ridenhour,
Aye.
Mr. Stauffer,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Bickford,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Guestford,
Aye.
Mrs. Murray.
Aye.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. The staff changes discussed earlier in closed session have been unanimously approved.
Mrs. Williams, this is Dr. Michael. May I take a moment of personal privilege, please?
Absolutely.
On our staff changes tonight, I do want to make two notes. I'm sure the board somewhat regrets to accept the resignation of Dr. Laura Hanks. Dr. Hanks has been with us, I believe, for 7 years. She served with distinction as an assistant principal, as a principal, and most recently as a tremendous backbone of our ELA and social studies department as the supervisor of that department, of those departments. We greatly are going to miss her. We thank her for her service. I know she has a pending vote next week, but she will be, without a doubt, an outstanding superintendent for Greencastle Antrim School District. And we wish her all the best. Again, she will be missed here in Washington County. Maybe we'll look for some opportunities to partner across the state line if we can have mutual benefit for the advantage of children. I'd also like to note Dr. Hanks holds a key position. We need to make this transition as quickly and smoothly as possible. And tonight, the board just approved Ms. Carly Pumphrey, currently the principal of Clear Spring Elementary School, to be the new supervisor of K-12 English Language Arts Social Studies here at the Center for Educational Services. So congratulations, Ms. Pumphrey, and we wish Dr. Hanks the best. I know she's still working with us, so we're not going to quite let her get out the door next, but we're going to work on our transition here immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. This time we'll have reports to the board. I've asked Vice President Stauffer to report on his attendance at the MABE Legislative Committee meeting yesterday. Mr. Stauffer?
I'm sure all my colleagues are excited to hear I have a report. It was a 2-hour meeting. I tried to cut down the important points, so let me start here. Of course, we know the governor vetoed 22 bills that would increase state spending, and in doing so, he cited damage from the pandemic and the stress on local and state budgets. He gave statistics in his veto letter about specifics about what this would mean to the state revenue source and so forth, which I won't go into. We talked about the protected status of educational funding. The Senate Bill 1030 last year passed some funding already for current legislation. It's already in effect. In fact, the first 3 years of current are already funded according to the state. Maryland has a recovery plan. It's 54 pages long. I think Dr. Bishop already noted this, and I'm sure it's on the State Board of Education website. The Build to Learn Act only takes effect when the blueprint does. So if anyone really wants to know that, just Google Build to Learn Act. You can find out what that is. The big thing was on the blueprint for Maryland's future, previously known as the Quorum committee legislation. Proponents now say it's more critical now than ever before, what with the faltering economy and the uncertain fiscal future. The blueprint carries a multi-billion-dollar price tag, a 10-year phase-in. a lot of lawmakers, some say we need to go ahead right away with it and institute it regardless. One such person is Senator Paul Pinsky, who's the chair of the Education and Environmental Committee of the Maryland Senate. One thing that might help the Quorum legislation get passed is that this past session, when it was passed, Senator Nancy King, the majority leader of the Senate, added an amendment, a safety valve amendment, that would limit educational spending increases to the rate of inflation if the state revenue drops by 7.5%, 7.5% in a given year. But she's also saying, I don't know with the fiscal crisis how we can move ahead with it. Another issue caused by I'll call it a quirk in the legislative calendar, is that any bill with mandated funding that is vetoed, and the legislature, the General Assembly, doesn't override the veto before July 1st, the governor is not required to plan for that amount of funding in the upcoming budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So it's interesting to see whether the General Assembly will try in some way to override some of the governor's vetoes before July 1st or not. If they don't do it in a special session, they, of course, could override the veto in January. Some say when the fiscal outlook for the state has improved. But others are saying that given that the first 3 years are funded, the reforms could take hold even during these precarious times. House of Delegate leaders sent a letter to various leaders of state education, such as General Sumter, the president of the Board of Education of the state of Maryland, Dr. Salmon, people from MSCA and others, making their suggestions and thoughts on opening schools, knowing about how some things they think should be done. They call it a menu of ideas. And then there was a controversy discussed over the distribution of money from the CARES Act, which is the bill passed to aid state governments and so forth. What the controversy rages over is the fact that, according to the CARES Act and Title I, funds for Title I usages must be distributed based on a proportion to the numbers of economically disadvantaged students enrolled in each school district. The problem is the Federal Department of Education offers guidance, it's called, that promotes the use of total enrollment rather than the proportionate enrollment of low-income students to be used. And so there has been a letter sent from MABE concerning that, and MABE noted in their letter that the Indiana Department of Education announced a decision to ignore the federal guidance because it contravenes federal law, meaning the CARES Act and Title I. So that's all I had to report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stauffer. Are there any other committee chairs that would like to report? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move then to miscellaneous business. With regard to future agenda items, I have nothing to bring to you in the way of future agenda items, but I would like to remind you of two changes that we've made to our calendar. The first change is that we've added something else to our day of work session on June 2nd. We have a work session scheduled for 2 p.m. that day. So in addition to discussing the educational facilities master plan, as we had on our calendar, we will also be discussing fiscal year 2021's operating budget. The second change I would like to remind you of is that we decided earlier today to change our second day of meetings in June, which would have been June 16th. We're going to not meet on June 16th, but meet the following week on June 23rd. At this time, we'll move to board member comments. Mr. Rodnour, would you like to begin?
I have nothing at this time, President Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Rodnour. Mr. Gesford.
At this time, I have nothing.
Thank you. Mr. Stauffer. Mr. Stauffer may be on mute. Mr. Stauffer, are you there? Mrs. Murray.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Just like to thank the families of Washington County and the staff of WCPS and anybody else that I may not have mentioned for dealing with distant learning and all the problems that have been caused by the COVID-19 outbreak and so forth. I also want to thank the guidance people at Williamsport High School for doing an excellent job of getting out information about scholarships. I belong to the Williamsport Lions Club and we give a scholarship, but anyhow today I found out who the recipient will be and so forth, and they also announced the winner of the Social Studies Award given to the outstanding student in social studies at Williamsport, which I'm involved with also. So I want to thank them for doing a good job by doing it remotely as they've been forced to do and so forth. And I want to wish our esteemed president a happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Mrs. Fisher.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Bickford.
I'd like to thank our student representative, Mr. Mackley, for his guidance as we figure out how we are going to try to make graduations as special as possible under the guidelines that we have at that moment. And I appreciate that he's also been answering emails of concerned citizens, so thank him for that. And also wish you a happy birthday as well, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Mrs. Murray.
I just would like to echo what Mr. Stauffer and Mr. Bickford said. And do we know who our SMOB is for next year? Chris? Mr. Mackley?
Yeah, we do. Our next SMOB will be Kevin Bocoum. He's a sophomore from North Hagerstown High School.
Oh, great. Okay. That's great. All right. Well, we'll look forward to working with him. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Mackley.
Yeah, actually, as I was preparing for tonight's meeting, I actually realized that this is my last meeting as a student in WCPS. It's not my last board meeting yet, but it's my last meeting before the senior school year ends. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to specifically thank all my teachers and all those teachers who have gotten me here and who have worked hard to make this distance learning work for all their students. And having a teacher in my own house, I can really see how hard these teachers are working to make this situation work as best as possible for everybody. So it doesn't go unnoticed by us. And I just want to say thank you for that. And also, I just wanted to let you guys know Kevin Bocoum, our next student member of the board, his term will begin July 1st. So I'm working with him to help him kind of transition into his new role. And I think he'll be ready once the time comes for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mackley. Thank you for your remarks. I have no comments this evening other than to thank Dr. Hanks for her service to Washington County Public Schools and to wish her well in her new position. And Christopher, I hope these last few days of your senior year are, I can't say everything you'd hope they'd be because I'm sure they're not going to be everything you'd hope they'd be. But I hope that they're good days for you. Dr. Michael, do you have anything further before we adjourn?
I do not. Thank you.
Colleagues, does anyone have anything further? Okay, then we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.